Welcome to the MediPro EDI Clearinghouse webinar, brought to you by Practice Insight. My name is Sean McAnulty, and today I'm going to be covering a lot of the tools and functionality that you are going to have access to through Practice Insight. Now, of those tools, we are going to be covering today, more specifically, our Eligibility Manager, our Patient Cost Estimator, our Claims Management tool. I'm going to be showing you how you can view and access your ERA data, and lastly, the Task Manager tool. Now I'm going to start by logging right into my EDI Insight. Now when I log in, it brings me to my Task Manager home screen. Now Task Manager is our home screen because you have a lot of capability to automate and set up your own desired workflows or monitor your data from an enterprise level all the way right down to any specifics that you're looking for. But I'm going to come back to Task Manager a little bit later. So as you look on the left menu here, I want to show you all of the tools that Practice Insight offers. First is our Claim Manager application. This is our claims management tool. You have the ability to go in, search, work, manipulate, and monitor all of your claims data. We never get rid of it. The next button here is our ERA management tool. So this is allowing users to get unfettered access to their remittance data. They can see everything. Now we also have a statement manager option where we can send statements out and receive those responses, as well as send out e-statements. But where I'm going to start today is our Eligibility Manager tool, because this is where the revenue cycle truly begins in Practice Insight. Now, as the patient makes their appointment or calls the practice, the eligibility request is sent, and it can be automatically and integrated right into Practice Insight, where we send the request right out the door and receive the request instantaneously from the payer. Now, Eligibility Manager is where we house all of those requests and responses. So this is where users can come in and navigate through all of their prior requests or current requests. As I mentioned before, we house all of this data for the life of that customer. So all of your patient data, it is all housed out here, and it's in a easy searchable format. So all of our applications, as you'll notice today, have this same three-window structure that you see here on Eligibility Manager, with the top being my selection criteria. So I can use this selection criteria to widen or narrow my search. So let's say a patient came in and they've already had their eligibility run, but I need to research it for some reason. I can come right in, I can put in the subscriber last name or the patient last name and hit my select records and immediately find that eligibility request. Now in this middle window, this is where we house and display all of the requests that meet your selection criteria. So as you'll notice, it's very user-friendly. It's simply, you can click and see exactly what's going on. Because as I single click on each one of these eligibility records, I can look at the history of that record, when it was sent into Practice Insight, when we sent it out the door, and when we received that response. Now right here in this view, I can see the subscriber data, I can see the payer data, I can also see, as a quick referenceable field, the result of that current request, whether it was active or inactive. Now, we have the ability to also drop all of these responses right back into the PM system and made available to the PM system so that this can be a fully integrated process. But if users want to view the eligibility results right inside of Practice Insight, we have that capability as well. So if a user was simply to double click on this completed eligibility request, they will see the full eligibility and benefit information by services first. This is our default view. And for anybody who's familiar with a 271 response, you will notice this is much cleaner than that. So we have done our own maintenance to make this much more user-friendly. Now, Eligibility Manager, in this top section, we are going to display the payer, the submitter data, any trace numbers. We're also going to show the subscriber information at the top. Now, one thing that's really functional for all of you users out there is that anytime if we send a complete eligibility response or the right demographic data and the payer has anything differing, what we're going to do is we're going to flag that in red in this subscriber area. So if it was the wrong name or if something was different, if anything was different than what we sent out and the payer can acknowledge it, they will, and we will flag it in red. So let's say you accidentally mistyped the member ID number or had the wrong member ID number in general. If it comes back as red, you know you need to update that member ID, and now you just cut off the opportunity to have a rejected claim because you're able to fix it on the front end. So if you've given the payer enough unique information that they can readily identify that patient, they will do you that favor of giving you back that information. Now, what users like best about our default eligibility response here is that we always give the health benefit plan coverage at the top. Okay, so the physician office visit, the health benefit plan coverage, that is always going to be displayed at the top of this view. And as you can see, it's going to be broken down with the titles and the headers to where you can see the coinsurance, any deductible, if the payer is delivering it to us. Now, as I scroll down, you'll notice all of these services then start to be displayed in alphabetic order. We found, based off of user testimony, that this is a very easy to navigate view. And as I mentioned, user enhancements is what drives the bulk of our tools. So what really users love about us is if there's something that's a pain point to them, they're able to tell their vendor like MediPro and say, hey, I wish it could do this, because we absolutely are constantly enhancing, and that's where most of these tools and functionality that you're seeing on this webinar come from, is directly from the users, because you work with this stuff daily. Speaking of one such enhancement, we've added this capability to also view the eligibility and benefit information based off of the coverage. So if I'm in my default view here, or my by services, I can click on this hyperlink and it's immediately going to give me a different view where I can see my basic information by standard coverage. So this is a dynamic view. I can use my filters. I can say I only want to see information in network. I can also edit my service selections. So even though I've already received my response, I can even narrow it down here. And then I can add those filters or apply them and immediately see them in my coverage information down here. Now, what's also fantastic about this enhancement when it came out is we also give users the ability to default this information. So for your specialty, for your practice, if you know you always want to see in Practice Insight your eligibility information by a specific set of information, you can come in and manage your defaults of those views. You can say, you know what, we always want to see it by coverage, or we always want to see very specific responses if we receive them because we're a specialty practice. So you also have the ability to select and default your print list coverages and print list copays. Now, as I mentioned, Eligibility Manager, you can have as much or as little manual intervention as you'd like here. We have the ability to be nearly completely integrated where everything's moving fluidly and you're only noticing anything if that eligibility record did not go to a completion. So you can track that in Practice Insight very easily in one of two places, either via a task or right here in the Eligibility Manager by looking up the statuses of your eligibility records. So as the eligibility request comes into Practice Insight, we're going to test it. We're going to make sure all the basic required demographics are there. Then we're going to send it out to the payer. And as I mentioned, it is real time, so that response gets delivered nearly instantaneously. Now, in the event that there's an error or a problem, you're going to be alerted to that by seeing a rejection message or an error. Now, if it's an invalid eligibility request, that means something's missing. And we're going to go that extra mile to tell you, hey, subscriber name and ID number are required. So you can easily monitor any eligibility request that's not going with the status quo just by pulling those statuses. And then working them is just as easy. If you want to work it right here, you can. You can just view and read that error message. You can double click and you can edit this request in one sitting. Once you've added the missing information, so in this case it's the subscriber ID, I can input that number, and once I hit this save icon, it's going to ask me, do I want to check that eligibility in real time? And it's immediately going to send it out to the payer. And in this case, because this is a demo system and it's not actually attached to our payers, this is the response I get, but that is literally how fast you're going to get that response back, and you can pull that response back into the PM. So it's very quick, it's very easy to use. Now, if you see anything else, you're always going to be alerted to that information by using your selections or by using a task and monitoring that information if you need to. Now, most of our users never have to deal with that at a large rate. It's very easy because the demographic information is input and it's being sent straight from your system. Now another great feature of our Eligibility Manager is, let's say you've got a patient that comes in off the street and they're just a walk-in and you haven't had time to put them into your scheduler maybe. Well, you can hit this add one, and in about as long as it takes you to input a payer, input a provider ID, throw in or select a service type, and then put in their basic information, you can send off a one-off eligibility request. So it's very quick, very easy. So again, we've tried to make it very user-friendly where you get to readily access your data. And again, if you ever need to come back to it, it is always here. We're never removing this information. Now, along with Eligibility Manager, another one of those fantastic enhancements brought along by our customers is our patient cost estimation tool. So with this, users now have the ability that if they're sitting with their patient and they want to run a patient cost estimation, it's built right into the Eligibility Manager tool. So it's something that's very easily done. By simply, once the eligibility has been completed, it's been run, and it's run to completion, no matter how it completed, a user can simply pull up that person in the selection criteria, find their completed record, and they can start their patient cost estimation just by hitting that patient cost estimation button. Now, this is the view of the end result of a fully run patient cost estimation, but I'm going to jump back to the very first step. Thankfully, patient cost estimation is a very easy 1, 2, and you're done process, because we've built a lot of knowledge into the programming that's taking into account a lot of your data as you're receiving it from the payer. What I mean by that is, what we're loading in this first step is we already know what the patient primary and secondary insurances are, because that's what you've loaded to us. Now, if there is no secondary insurance, don't worry. We're still going to show whatever you've submitted. But yes, we can view eligibility information for a primary and a secondary and have that accounted for in our patient cost estimations. Now, what we're loading into this estimation right away is our patient account number. Then we're loading the scheduled data service. Now, if a user wants to input the encounter ID, you have the ability to. So if you want to numerate this estimation for future purposes, you absolutely can. Also, what has been added into this estimation is a previous balance. So if you are aware that this user or this patient has a previous balance, you can input this in to more accuratize this full estimation. Then what we're also doing is we are taking note of the rendering provider on this eligibility request that we pulled this information off of. So the next step in the process is that a user or whoever is sitting there across from the patient is simply going to insert the procedures and modifiers of what they're estimating. So in this case, we've already entered the eye exam. We've entered our all of our eye exam tests, our photos, our procedure and modifier for these procedures. And we've easily input that. Now, users can add this in one of many ways. Number one, if you're just that comfortable, you can just start typing a procedure code. If you just start typing it in, we're going to give you a quick drop down, or you can enter it completely. That's up to you. Now, let's say you don't know that type code or the procedure code off the top of your head. You can start using the alpha character to start typing it in. And it will run a search based off of that. Or you can use the even easier process of select from a working list of your previously used procedures and modifiers. So that when you click on this option, it's going to display these are what you've done in the past. So to add one quickly and easily, you can just double click and it's going to add that right into the estimation. Now, what is truly one of the more impressive features that I've seen so far in this new tool is we now also offer the ability to add procedure groups. So if you've pre-built, if you are a specialist and every time you don't want to have your user going in and inputting all the procedures for a specific group, you can predefine this information by adding it in. And then I just come in and add that, and it's going to add all of that information right onto my patient cost estimation for me. So I don't have to manually type it out every single time. Now, the next section of this patient cost estimation is what do you want to see your available insurance eligibility for? Is it the primary insurance or the secondary insurance? So I can say, you know what, this is going to be Medicare Part B. I've selected my health benefit plan coverage, but I can select more than just that. So if I wanted to see it for Medicare Part A, I could, or I could say all, and it'll show me all, and I'll get the ability to navigate and make more definitive statements in my next step. So depending on what I select here is going to determine how much manual intervention I may need to do in this next step. Now again, I can do this for both my primary, or if there's a secondary available, I can select that as well. Now I then get to make the determination of, is the primary deductible covered by secondary insurance, yes or no? Because each one of these estimations is going to be, could potentially be very unique. So we've added as much capability to let a user make that determination instead of us predefine it for you. Now, once I've input this information, I'm going to hit the submit button. And that takes me to the second step of this estimation, where it's giving me a base calculation. So at the top here, it's giving me a current estimate due of $72.69, and then it breaks out where it's getting those numbers from. And that brings me to my first section here of my estimated rates for selected procedures. Now, how we are getting this information is based off of one of two options. You can either manage and input your specific fee schedule into our Manage Tables section that I showed you earlier, or you can do it the easy way. Let us look at the information that we've seen in your prior ERA history, and we will associate that for that specific set of data, whether it be for that specific code, that specific modifier, for that specific rendering provider or group. So we can do a lot of that matching for you. Now, if you ever see anything in here that as a user you want to override, you absolutely have that capability. So you can come in. If you know that, you know what, in this instance, we know that's not the case, it's actually 190. I can input that in, and it will display in blue so that any other user that ever logs in and looks at this estimation is going to see that it has been changed. Now from here, I also get 3 extra selections where I can choose to either apply or waive the deductible for this line item, the coinsurance, or the copay. So it's very quick, very easy, and I get to make those determinations. Now they are going to default, but I get the ability to make adjustments to that as I see fit. Now for my primary insurance, I can come in, and again, based off of those filters that I already predefined on my previous page, it's going to make those selections for me and display them. So I can see right away that the health benefit plan coverage, my deductible, I've got $72.69 remaining, so that's where that amount comes from that I've got up here. Now again, if let's say the patient says, no, I paid $50 on that already, so my insurance, just the eligibility response didn't display it, well, you don't have to get in a fight with them. You can just type in, you know what, I'm going to adjust it based off of that value. Now it's down to $27, so it actively adjusts that value. Again, it goes blue so that you can see it in the future. Now, if at any time at the bottom of the screen, if you want to add a note for a patient, you absolutely can. So now to see the final estimate, all I have to do is hit that save icon, and now I get a more professional final view that I can then print out and give to the patient and discuss and walk them through exactly what this information is covering. So at the top, it's going to show me it's my primary insurance estimation, and based off of the values that we've entered from the fee schedules or by manual intervention, we can break down and show them exactly what their estimated primary insurance is going to be paying. And then if I wanted to run it for my secondary, I could as well. Now what it's also going to have is at the bottom, it's going to have all of your great lawyer speak. But what's really fascinating is you also have the ability, the patient, if they want to make a payment, we can, in this digital view, hit this pay now and make a payment right here and collect that up front. So it's very quick, easy, and it gets routed right into the system. Now, if I need to start over at any given point or move back a step, I can. And these estimations are saved out there forever. So our patient cost estimation, very easy to use. It's very user friendly. Now that brings me now to my Claim Manager application. Again, as I mentioned before, Claim Manager is where we house and users have the ability to view, maintain, and work with all of their claims data. Now, just like Eligibility Manager, claims are loaded into the system. They are loaded in via an integrated method where you don't really, all you have to do is batch it from the PM and they just flow seamlessly into the system. Now the claims initially are going to be tested, and again those tests are going to be high level to make sure everything that's on that claim that's required is there. So if there's any initial errors or any initial problems, we catch it on the front end so that you're not having to deal with the payer's rejections. As little as possible is our goal there. Now, just like Eligibility Manager, you'll notice there is 3 windows here. So I've got my selection criteria where I can narrow down and really drill down into my claims data. I've got my claim selection list view here, my ability to see exactly what's going on with that claim. I get a high-level view where I can see, yes, this one's currently at paid ERA. I can see what payer it's for, who the billing provider. I can see all of that high-level claim data right here. Now, I've got a lot of other features and functionalities where if I needed to make an adjustment to that claim, if I was editing it here, I can open this up and really drill down deeper into my claim information. So it's very intuitive. It's click, double click. Now, one of my personal favorites is we've got, if you don't know ANSI, and you don't have to, but a lot of times the payer will respond and say, hey, you're not sending us this qualifier in this area. Well, what you can do is if you hover on any field on a claim, we're going to tell you exactly what that loop and segment is so that you can know what you need to fix if they tell you that information. We also give you very easy views of a claim in ANSI if you need to break it down and do a little more detailed research on your own. That is another very common thing that we hear from our users is that we are very, again, patient or provider and practice centric. Our goal was to give you all of the tools you need to really combat all the nonsense that the payers are trying to send back to you. Because they are definitely getting better these days at trying to slide rejections past you when it's not really a rejection. It's just them wanting to hold on to their money a little longer. So as that claim comes in, it's loaded, it's tested, we are automatically, if it is clean, we're going to set it to valid. We are then going to send that claim out the door to the payer. We're going to give that claim status updates as it comes back from the payer, or as we hear back from the payer. So you can see in the claim history on this specific claim that it was loaded, it was found to be clean, it was then sent right out the door all in the same day. We received our first response. We received another acknowledgement the next day. We received our accepted response from the payer, and then we received our paid ERA, or our ERA reimbursement. Now, as you will, as a user, know exactly where a claim is standing based off of this claim status. So at any given time, you will know exactly how a claim is doing and how the bulk of your claims are doing by running reports or using Task Manager to track and monitor your data. But what I love about this is that once you get a response, it immediately changes the claim status, and now you can perform any research functions you need to. So what users love about this tool right here is if I wanted to research this ERA, if I wanted to look at this EOB, I have that capability right from here. I just double click on this response, and there's my ERA as an EOB view. But you'll also notice that it is just for that one claim. So anybody that's ever done any researching or specifically done any appeals has probably gone through the pain of having to scan and then black out other PHI because they had to print off the entire ERA file. Well, we give users the ability to see the EOB as an individual claim or at a file level. So I can see the EOB for the complete check right here at the claim level, or if I don't want to find a claim first, I have a much easier method that I can go into this transfer files section. So transfer files is really the behind the scenes. Okay, so as those claims are loading into Practice Insight, you'll see those files in this upper section or this uploaded files section. Now, as responses are coming in back from the payers or any other external area, they are housed in our response files section. Now, in this response files section, you have the ability to filter this down. So one of the most common situations is people are looking for missing ERAs or lost ERAs or a missing check. Well, one of the easy locations to do that is right here in our filter list. So I can come in, I can look for a specific file type. There's my ERA. I can put in my beginning and ending date ranges. I can even put in a specific check number if I know it. And then I just hit my save icon, and everything that meets that criteria immediately appears. Now from here, I have a whole host of capabilities. I can open up this EOB. I can also view it as an ANSI file if I needed to. But if I right click or use my buttons here, so we attempt to be very user friendly. If you're more of a hotkey person, we have hotkeys everywhere. If you're more of a button person, a lot of the hotkeys or right click options that are very important are also buttons. So I can view the entire EOB. But more importantly is if this is missing from my PM system, I want to get it loaded back there without any hassle. As an end user, right here from this ERA, once you find it, you have that capability. So you have two options. You can either repost this file back to the SFTP directory, or it's that integrated directory I was talking about earlier, and if your PM's set up for it, it'll automatically pull that ERA file back in and post it. Or you also, if you need this file for later, you can simply just download the file right from here. So we've tried to give end users all the tools they may need so that they don't have to go and ask everybody else and wait for those responses. Now, I do want to show you a very easy method of how the claims are brought into the system. So I'm going to show you a more manual process where I'm going to go into my claim manager, I'm going to go into my transfer files, and I'm going to upload a claim file. So I'm just going to go to my claim file because I know where it was outbounded to, and I just double click and it loads into the system. Now, because I'm doing this manually, you're going to see a little bit more of the back end processes where the claims are going to load, then they're going to be tested. So it's running those internal testers. And then in the top section here, as that claim file loaded in, I get a quick breakdown of what I'm seeing. So the great thing about this, especially if you're integrated or manually uploading, is that you can quickly and easily identify exactly what was sent from the PM and did Practice Insight receive it. So you can run a report on your PM to see what you batched, and then if the totals don't match, you know something's going on. So I can see I immediately have 44 valid claims, which means they passed our tests and they're going to get auto-readied and sent out to the payer. I've got 8 claims that are invalid. So we stopped them because there was an error that we identified, and they're going to require user intervention to get those to go out the door. Now, in that claim file, you had 52 claims, totaling $43,000. 51 of them were electronic, 1 was dropped to paper, 32 of those claims are Medicare, 3 are Blue Cross Blue Shield, and 17 are commercial. I can even see who exactly loaded it. That's another thing you're going to notice about Practice Insight is everything is tagged. You're able to see exactly who did what, when, and where. Now, moving forward, let's get these claims out the door. So I just loaded all these claims. I want to see how they go out the door. So the claims have been loaded in. All these claims that are set to ready, we batch those automatically for you and send them to the payer. So you don't have to deal with any of those. The only ones you want to take notice of are if they're in an invalid status. Now notice how easy this is. I'm going to highlight this invalid claim. And down in the history down here, it's telling me, hey, this procedure code is invalid for this data service. Okay. Now you have multiple options here. Users can fix things in Practice Insight, but ideally you'd want to fix it in the PM system and then just reload it into the Practice Insight system. But in this instance, I'm going to go back in, I'm going to fix this right here because I also have the PM system pulled up right now, and I'm going to make the change in the PM system as well so that everything matches up. Now, what makes this really easy inside of Practice Insight is if this is a test or edit like this, we've already pre-mapped it. So I'm going to double click on this error, and it takes me right to the location on the claim that my problem is. So from right here, now I can quickly and easily click my drop down, and I can find, for instance, let's just say I needed to grab this procedure code, and I can say, hey, okay, this one's in the right effective date range, and as a biller, I know this one's right. So I'm going to select that one. It's in. Once I hit my save icon, it's automatically going to retest. Now, if I did something wrong, it's going to flag as that test again. And it's going to show me I still have a problem. Now, if I do it right, like for this one, I've got my diagnosis. I'm going to just clear that diagnosis pointer. You'll notice it automatically tests. Now I only have one more problem. I'm going to clear that one. I hit save. Now it automatically tests to valid. And to get it to go out the door, I'm going to hit that ready. That's all I have to do to get the claims out the door. Now I've already shown you that ideally we get those payments back, the paid ERAs, but you're going to get updates throughout the entire process. If that claim was sent with an acknowledgement status, the claim is going to change its status from ready to sent to acknowledged, and you'll be able to track it throughout the entire process. Now we also have a host of other capabilities. So if you wanted to check the claim status, if that payer is in red, you can run a real-time check claim status and see exactly what the payer stated, what their determination on that claim was before you've even potentially received the ERA response or any response whatsoever. So I'm going to show you an example of that real quick. So this is going to be where the claim was sitting out there for the longest time. It was just acknowledged. We had no idea what happened with it. And this payer was in red. So what we did is I identified that and I went ahead and hit this check claim status. When I did that, I was lucky enough that it came back. This is a real-time response. It takes about that long to get directly back from the payer. In this instance, I lucked out. The payer identified this as they paid this claim. It's going to give me some basic information, showing me the claim amount, how much they decided to pay, what the payer reference number is, so that I can call the payer. If this was supposed to be an ERA and I haven't received it yet, I can call them and there's my number I can reference. I can see the adjudication date, the payment date, and the method. It also does break down each line item and give you a very high-level view of what's going on there. So if those payers are in red, you can do a real-time check. Now remember that Add One feature you saw in Eligibility Manager. Well, Claim Manager also has that feature. So let's say you're working with a claim, maybe it's a rejected claim and you don't really know why it's rejected, but they are mentioning that it's payer, something to do with the subscriber. If that claim has a red E associated to it, then you can immediately run an eligibility request right from the claim. And if you remember what I said earlier about if you give the payer enough identifying information, they may send you back the corrected information. So if they're telling you that there's a problem with that subscriber ID and you run an eligibility request and they send you back the right subscriber ID, you can easily input it right on the claim by double-clicking and adding that ID number in, and then you can just re-ready the claim. So it's very easy to get claims out the door, and then the claims that are coming back as you're receiving those responses, you can pull them apart. You can say, I want to see all my paid ERAs. I want to see all the claims that are just outstanding. I want to see all the claims that are in a workable status. You have complete and utter control and view of your claim cycle. So you have the complete capability to do whatever you need to right from here. Now, as I mentioned, in regards to looking up that ERA data, so if you're doing an appeal, we do have some capabilities to make this much easier for you. Now, let's say you get a denied claim, and it comes back, and as I mentioned, you can research the EOB right here. You can print it off, you can view it, but if you're missing a check, like I showed you from transfer files, that's actually one location you can search for ERAs and EOBs. The other way is right in our search tools area. We've got a check search here. Now, what's great about this check search is it is much more robust. It's got a customer ID, so you can look across multiple customers if you're a CBO. It's got a check number. It also has a check amount field. It's got a beginning and ending date range. It's got a payee NPI tax ID. You can pull and look for checks or ERAs for a specific payer and a specific payment method. But if I just hit a search, I can see all of my ERAs and checks right from here. And if I do find that missing check, again, just like you saw in transfer files, I have the ability to view the EOB standard remittance. I can also download this ERA file, or I can repost it back to the FTP directory. So again, lots of functionality, all within just a few inches of computer screen. So all of this, you can customize a lot of your capabilities here. You can adjust exactly how the columns, exactly how you want them. So if you always know you're going to be researching specific features, you can move these columns around as much as you want. But if you remember, I was talking about doing an appeal. So we do have canned print letters. So not only we have a claim appeal letter, claim status letter, a refund request, a medical record submission, patient due, and an adjustment letter. I'm going to open up this appeal letter. So if I view it, it automatically pulls that claim's information. And I can state that I've got a reason for this appeal. I can say that I'm attaching information. Once I do that, I'm going to mark it as printed. So if I mark it as printed, it's going to go from red to green. And now this claim is going to be flagged as appealed so that I know what claims I need to follow back up with once I've actually sent that appeal letter out the door. Now there's a few other things with the appeals letter that you're going to want to send with it, such as the EOB. I've already shown you how you can print that off. And we also have this is our common MREP style, or I'm sorry, this is our common MREP style. So if you still have payers that require this view or you prefer this view, you still have that view. So you can print this off and send this along with the letter. Now one extra feature we have is our view claim form. So you can view the claim exactly as it would look if it was printed on a HCFA. So this is not only good for appeals, but it's also great for when you're fighting with the payer and they're speaking in terms of boxes instead of loops and segments, and you want to compare apples to apples. So you can print off this view right here. And you have two capabilities here. If you don't want to have to load a HCFA form, you can use this printer view and it'll print everything. It'll print the background, it'll print all of it right on that paper. If you use this button, it's only going to print the digital information and you'll just load your own HCFAs. So now you've wrapped up that entire appeal and you've sent it out the door. Now all of our applications come with a whole host of analytics and reports. So you have custom data miner reports that you can custom build whatever you want to see. That is really the theme of our application, is we wanted to give you as much viewability capability as you've always wanted. And now what I think ties everything together is I'm finally going to talk about the Task Manager. Last but not least, again, I said this is your home screen. This is where you start off. So as those claims, or if you're a manager, if you're an end user, you have multiple capabilities here. It's really your sandbox. You get to determine what and how you use this Task Manager tool. Now the most common tasks are right here in my demo view. So the number one task for anybody using Claim Manager is you want to be tracking your rejected and invalid claims. So as you can see, this task, all it is a saved set of selection criteria. So from an end user's perspective, instead of having to learn everything about this entire application, I can have a task built for me, and all I have to know is that I log in, I see this task that's either been built for me or by me, and I can see I've got 69 claims out there for $14,000 hung up as rejected or invalid. I double click on that, and there are those claims that I need to research and work. So I can just start working right away. And as I work these claims and as I ready them, when they no longer meet the criteria of that task, they'll automatically drop off. So I can see how productive I've been. So if I work this down to 0 every day, anytime I log in, it's a real-time view that I can see exactly what's out there. The great thing is you can build this for all of our applications. There's a rejected and invalid task for my eligibility. So eligibility is really important that I make sure all of those are worked, because I don't want to see that patient if we haven't gotten some form of completed eligibility request. Whether or not that eligibility request is saying they have active coverage or not, I do not want it to be sitting at rejected or invalid. I want it sitting at complete, and then if it's complete and they have inactive coverage, I can readily ask the patient or reach out to the patient and be proactive to find out, hey, that eligibility didn't work. Do you have another card? And I can rerun it because you can edit it right here. Now, just a few other common task manager examples are if you want to track your denied claims. So as those claims come in, as we're receiving those responses, if they get denied, I can have those automatically routed to a specific staff member to research. And that's the great thing about Task Manager is you can automate as much workflow as you want. If all I do when I log in is I just want to know the basics and I just want to see how are we doing as a practice, or how is this practice doing, I can have some pre-built tasks built for me. And when I log in, I can just see and say, okay, why do we have this many rejected and invalid claims? So if you can think it, you can build a task for it to find it. Because these tasks, if I edit this task, you'll notice it has a whole host of selection criteria. So it's nearly identical to the selection criteria in all of these applications, but the big advantage here is in a task, I have even more granular capabilities. So I can pull claims that have a specific procedure code or a specific set of procedure codes and diagnosis codes, or claims that are getting hit with a specific error message. So tasking really gives me the ability to not only monitor my staff and monitor my daily processes, but it also allows me to get ahead of problems before they become problems. So depending on how you build these, because they are completely up to you on how you build them. So I'm going to build a quick claim task. You can really do whatever you want. So I want to see just everything that's paid ERA. And I'm just going to use a very basic set of selection criteria. But it's that easy to build a task. And you can use any of those selection criteria to narrow that down to where you can almost use this as a mini dashboard. Now, along with Task Manager, you also can schedule reports. And they're going to show up in this lower section of Communication Center. So you can schedule them and have them deliver to other staff members or yourself, so that you can quickly and easily identify tracks or trends and identify where you're going and how things are going. So if I want to look at my monthly clean claim report, so if I look at this month over month, and this green section of clean claims, claims that have gone out the door the first time without any problems, and that 93% keeps growing, then I know I'm going the right direction. But we give you enough information that you can then analyze why claims are not going out the door clean, so that you can pinpoint those and drop that number. Now let's say I have multiple staff members working and I want to break this up. That's absolutely something I can do as well, where I can edit this task and I can say, you know what, Betty Biller, because I don't want one person to have to do the entire workload. She works only the rejected and invalid claims of patients A through M. So I'm just going to do a quick patient range here, A through M. And now I don't have people double working claims. So I can be more efficient with my staff and with their workloads. And then last but not least, one of my favorite features of Task Manager is, yes, you have the ability as a user to see everybody's tasks, to see what everybody's doing and see how everything's going. So if you use this filter task, you can see all the tasks that are out there currently, or you can build your own to monitor and follow along with what's going on. Now that was just a slight taste of what we offer as an EDI clearinghouse. And if you have any further questions, what I'd like you to do is, if you could please reach out to your MediPro representative. They would be happy to answer as many questions as you have. And with that said, I'd like to thank you for your time. I hope you have a fantastic day.